Good evening, fam. You are listening to Black LTD Radio with Crystal Tantric Yogi. I hope you had a wonderful weekend and a pleasant Monday so far. Tonight we have another intriguing show prepared for you, so please sit back, relax, put your feet up, and hang with me for the next hour as we delve into the world of healing through divine sexuality. I hope you guys who have been tuning in every week faithfully are happy with the shows thus far. I put a lot of thought into each show, but I'm always open to hearing, what you guys think. So if there is any topic you would like to hear on the show or any suggestions, contact me on my Instagram. It's Crystal Tantric Yogi. Just send me a DM sending me your feedback. Let me know what you think. I love to mix up the topics, but I know a lot of people want to learn more about Tantra. So moving forward, I will be trying to bring more experts on the show that can feed your mind. And tonight will be no exception. We have a very special guest this evening. He is my master Tantra teacher and guru, even though I know he prefers not for me not to use the term guru. I usually just call him Pati, Tafari Sudra Kumbhaka. So Tafari is a retired professional firefighter who now lives outside of Atlanta, Georgia, having the greater part of his life as a citizen of Memphis, Tennessee. He was raised in the traditional Southern Baptist church in his teen years, began visiting other churches, and was deeply involved in music and Black Corner lifestyle of the 1970s. It was in the late 1975 that paranoia and schizophrenia associated with drug use took him into a reflection on life and eventually into a 10-year study of the Bible. In his late 20s, he married with a child. After leaving the Judeo-Christian teachings, he opened a Black bookstore named Timbuktu and began the spiritual philosophy historical study of ancient man. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, taking the lead from a debilitating illness, showing him that he must drastically change his physical exercise program, he began to study Qigong, Tai Chi, and Kung Fu under Shifu Heruti Ramen Maat, which meshed with his studies with the Auxerre Asset Society, and began using diligently Tantra practices for his physical rejuvenation. Mr. Tafari has written 2 books on Tantra and is the founder of Shaktipati Tantric Guru Yoga, and also has taught Tantra to hundreds of individuals. So, you have a very extensive bio, but please now just say hello to everybody. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, and hello, everybody. I'm happy, feeling wonderful.
Yes, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today. Now, me and you discuss a plethora of topics because you are so well versed when it comes to different topics related to Tantra and the sexual arts. But you shared with me a very interesting lecture from TEDx on YouTube last week that I thought brought a very popular topic amongst my Instagram family, pornography and masturbation. Pretty regularly, I get asked the question from guys, what are my thoughts on masturbation and pornography, and do I think it's bad? I get asked from guys of all ages. My answer is usually the same. I feel like porn and masturbation is like anything else. It depends on your intention, your perspective, and how the activity is serving you in your life. Whether it can be, a wise thing to engage in. But for us in our Tantra family, it is like a fundamental part of how we practice and study Tantra. So briefly, please explain your thoughts on pornography and masturbation and how and why it is an important part of our Tantra.
Well, the pornography part is important in getting to know all the different areas and all the ways that the sexual energy can be governed, can be used to know the different things that are people doing. It's absolutely necessary to know how people are doing things, expressing themselves. You might come in contact with someone who has been in BDSM. You might come in contact with someone who's been in another area that we usually refer to as porn. On that, so just being well-rounded in what's going on around you, since you'll be teaching, sexuality and sensuality. The masturbation now, that's separate from porn. That's a practice that has been used by different cultures and different ways for millennia. Now, today's world, those two things can go together due to the internet. At one time, there was only Playboy books and Penthouse books, and there was very little, especially in the black community, even strip clubs. But now, those things are, they're flooding the airwaves, and they're flooding our neighborhoods. So we need to know about them. And in our culture, we don't use masturbation necessarily during the research of pornography. It's mostly separated. Of course, it's different with each individual, but the masturbation part is part of rituals, and the pornography part is more just a research tool.
Thank you for explaining that more clearly. I guess I should have I should have separated those two so people understood, but you did that beautifully. And we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll get into this TEDx lecture that you sent me about pornography and masturbation, and more specifically how it has to do with young men and the effect that it can have on their brains and desensitizing them. So stay tuned. This is Crystal Tantric Yogi, and you're listening to Black LTD Radio. Crystal Tantric Yogi and my master teacher, Tafari Kumbuka, who has joined us tonight. And we're talking about, before we left, how you had sent me a TEDx Talks from YouTube, which was very interesting. And in the lecture, which was called "How to Become a Sex God" by Gregory Schmidinger, something of the sort. You can look it up if you wanna watch it. It's really interesting. But it was about a young guy who suffered from erectile dysfunction in his 20s. And he found out the cause of it was from constantly masturbating to porn as a young teenager. And I just wanted to ask you, can you further explain the effect of the constant masturbation to porn, how that can have an effect on a teen's brain and eventually lead to erectile dysfunction as a young adult? And then also, how is this evidence of and how this is evidence of why the brain really is the most powerful sex organ that we have?
Of course, the brain is the most powerful sex organ, the most powerful and everything we can think of, and being an economist or a soldier or whatever. The brain is the master facilitator of hormones and how they are released into the body. And the hormones are our emotions. So if we are on the spiritual path, then we can actually begin to rise above whatever the emotions are demanding of us, and get into becoming, an enlightened person, a Christ, a Buddha on earth. Now, porn and young children, especially the brain, the big thing about that is the brain is not fully developed until about 25 years old. So, there are 7 chakras, and there are 7 years that they expand to create the actual physical body. 7, 14, 21, 28. So that's the 4th chakra. That's the heart chakra, and that's and that chakra at 28 years old is doing its best to put us on the heart's journey of the hero. Children and teenagers who are watching a lot of porn, sitting in front of that screen, they are going into trance, and especially if they are smoking pot, or if they are drinking, they're going into a hypnotic, mediumistic trance, and these things are cultivating the emotions to follow suit. So now the big thing about masturbating, especially a child or a teenager, and especially boys, is that they masturbate to the point that they ejaculate. At the time of ejaculation, that when whatever they're into is going to seed itself in their spirit. If you're chanting, which is wonderful, a spiritual chant, that's when that's when it's really going to take place, and that's when the body just lets go and accepts. With girls, it's a little more difficult for them, but it's less difficult for them also during their cycle when they're having their period. When they're having their period for that 2 or 3 days, the spirit is open to absorb whatever's put in it. In fact, that blood is a sacrifice, just like putting chicken blood or goat or ox on an altar and sacrificing it to the ancestors or the gods or whatever. And it's the same thing with the semen. The semen is a sacrifice. That fluid is pleasing and is a delicacy to the beings in the other world, another world. So and the thoughts and the pornography is gathering these creations, these creatures, these beings, these gods, goddesses, these ancestors to partake in the sacrifice. And so if we are in our gross physical and level, then we are ingraining all of that, and we are causing nature itself to provide that lifestyle for us. The ejaculation, and a young boy, if he's masturbating to porn, when they say masturbating to porn 4 or 5 times a day, they're actually talking about ejaculating all that time, So that depletes the body. Once the cum is no longer white and thick, and it becomes watery, and then it comes to a point where there's no more, no liquid at all. Then the body starts to use other hormones, and it starts to actually eat of itself in order to create sperm. It says to itself, well, hey, my main purpose is to procreate, so I'm going to take liquid, I'm going to take ingredients from the brain, from the liver, from the heart, and they might need it, but I'm going to create this more semen and sperm for this individual.
Because it's now an ingrained program. And
yes,
in the mind and the heart, but also and how does that lead to erectile dysfunction when you get older, to where you can't maintain an erection?
Well, with young boys, generally, if they're really healthy and really strong, they get into weight building, which increases testosterone. They won't see it unless they continue on that path that they've have cultivated all through their 10 years. So more than likely they will continue because they cultivated in medium mystic trance, and that's the big reason. They continue into their 20s and into their 30s. They do the same thing, and only as a man they think, especially even when they get to be like 17 or 18, they think, well, I got to stop all this masturbating. So now they want to have sex with every woman that they possibly can, and as much as they possibly can, and so the body is still not properly healed, and later in years it just gives out.
Yeah, and then the talk lecture too. I think they talked about desensitization, being desensitized by porn, because there's such a heightened a physical instant gratification, and when you're intimate with someone, it's a little bit different. And so the desensitizing, could that be also a part of the difference in trying to make love with a woman, and then and not being able to hold an erection? But before you answer that, let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. This is Black LTD Radio with Crystal Tantric Yogi. We're talking about masturbation and pornography, and specifically, especially for men, and the effect of constantly masturbating to porn at a young age, and the effect that it can have on the male body later as he gets older. And Pati or Tafari was saying how ejaculation, you're talking about when men are ejaculating and not just masturbating and holding their seed, which is a different practice. It's called semen retention that we practice in our Tantra. But this is talking about masturbation where you are ejaculating to porn, and the effects that it can have on you when you get older, or even as a young man, and possibly cause erectile dysfunction. And supposedly there is a lot of that, or a growing trend among men that suffer with that's not talked about. And we actually, the interest in this topic came from a TEDx talk YouTube video that my teacher sent me. I thought was a great topic for us to discuss. And I was asking Pati about the fact that besides, you talked a lot about biologically how you're losing a lot of fluids and hormones and protein that help keep the body strong, and that can deplete the body and prevent a man from being able to have a strong erection later. But also in the talk, they talked about, going back to the brain being desensitized from watching so much porn, because it's like you said, it's different from looking at a Playboy magazine. When you're watching pornography, I think Gregory, on the one who taught the lecture, was saying it's like having a virtual lover, several virtual lovers at a very young age, because you're constantly ejaculating to these very explicit videos. And as far as the brain is concerned, and being desensitized, and translating that and trying to make love to a woman later, is that also a part of causing erectile dysfunction?
Yes. The good thing thing about that, if he's young, he should be able to rehabilitate himself with a good a Chinese medical doctor, a naturopath, or a homeopathic physician. The big thing is he will, before there was porn on the internet, and the young boy, 17, 18, he would get with a girl and he would bang, bang, bust a nut really fast, you know, and she would be, of course, unsatisfied, and that. But with porn, now they're trying to imitate the guys that are you know, in the videos that are going, you know, long time strong. So what they're doing is taking cocaine, they're taking mollies, they're taking Viagra and Molly's, drinking gin and all of that together. And so to keep these long, strong erections. So they're performing a lot like these guys, but they're destroying their bodies. And with the ejaculating so much, and then still they've cultivated a life of masturbating to ejaculation. They still continue that, even though they have 2 or 3 girlfriends, go to the strip club, and you know, and get hair jobs and all this. So you know, they are totally desensitized from actual love making, and especially spiritual love making. And we saw this with the rise of gangster rap, where you know, it was totally misogynistic, you know, toward women, calling them bitches and hoes, and you know, and music, you know, it's popular everyday music. So they, you know, yes, they're totally desensitized from the woman. Therefore, they're totally desensitized from Kundalini energy within them, which is the feminine divine.
Yes, and I would think that also I had DJ on, who's a yogi, he was on last week, and he was talking about how, you know, being more self-aware and being more in touch with his intuitive side, and the yoga teacher helped him be a better lover and enjoy sex better, because you're not just trying to bust a nut and then leave, and that it's much more enjoyable that way as well, because again, you're not just masturbating inside of a woman. And I would think that even for a man who is looking for something more, that after a while, that could it be possible that even that would get old, trying to make love like a porn star and being numb and not really being able to feel the emotional or spiritual, as you said, aspect of making love, that would, you know, could turn, well, not make men aroused, you know, in the way that they would normally be able to enjoy, you know, sexual activity or making love.
Yeah, of course, you know, sex is an addiction. And just like alcohol, you know, you enjoy alcohol, but once you become addicted to alcohol and it's destroying your health and your body, you still got to do the alcohol. So
it's the program again, right?
Yes. So that's the desensitization that's becoming devitalized and all of that, you know.
What would you, so later on in the lecture, he talks about doing research to undo the damage of his teen years and wanting to go on to be, you know, a sex god. And he talks about, you know, using various health practices and taking a hiatus from porn to be able to perform and be a good lover or the best lover, because he said sex god. What would you suggest to someone who is looking for some help with dealing with ED and working to become the best lover they can be? Just shortly, briefly.
Briefly, master oral sex, master massage, and don't be threatened by using what we call tantric wand, what the world calls a dildo, or with your mate, with your partner, with your lover. Yes. People. I'll be brief. People who watch the video, he talks about Plato Cave, and that's an old mythological word, but in today's psychology, that's cognitive dissonance. To be separated and your own stupidity. So it's going to take a lot of psychological reprogramming. Yes.
Yeah, and then also just physically, like, what can a man do?
Of course, you need to see a naturopathic doctor or a traditional Oriental medical practitioner or a homeopath. You can begin in general, not in specific, but in general, stereotypically, you can take herbs like Tomcatali, ashwanga, and weightlifting builds testosterone. We have a ritual that can just be an exercise. It doesn't have to be a spiritual ritual called lingam flexing, and you can learn that. And those things start getting back on the path. So.
Yeah, and let's take another break, and maybe we'll get a little bit more into that practice. We'll talk a little bit more about that. This is Crystal Tantric Yogi, and you're listening to Black LTD Tantric Yogi on Black LTD Radio. And tonight we are super honored to have our special guest speaker, my master teacher, Tantra teacher, Tafari Kumbaka, and erectile dysfunction, if they've had an issue with masturbation and porn, and you are suffering from ED, and you had mentioned lingam flexing, so we just talk a little bit about that, because I'm sure there are some people that are out there that are curious. And I also want to mention that it also, if you're suffering from ED, it might be important to see a urologist as well, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. So with lingam flexing, talk a little bit about what muscles that you're working and what that is for someone who may not know.
All right. I always have trouble saying pubococcygeal muscle, PB muscle.
Yeah.
Muscle.
Me too.
But pretty much you can sum it up in the pelvic floor muscle and the prostate, working those two together to rejuvenate them, and simply flexing the penis. When you, especially if you have an erection and you cough, you'll see your penis bobble, make a jump. Mm-hmm. So those same exact muscles, you flex those. And in a nutshell, you flex in a rhythmic pattern, doing rhythmic breathing, and say for about 50 times. You take some lotion or oil or almond oil, something that's not going to hurt, sting the urethra, and you massage until you get to the point where you feel like you might ejaculate, and then you stop. And then at that point, you take what we call Dumo breaths. Another powerful breath would be Namano Nadi Shuddhi. You can look that up in Google, and that's the whole thing in a nutshell. We have it a lot more stratified and a lot more technical, but just in a nutshell, that's it. And this builds up stamina. It brings blood flow to the prostate, to the penis, to the testicles. It builds up semen that you do not release. You do not ejaculate, and you try to do this. If you're young, and you're suffering from ED, and you want to do this until you can have those erections again. Once you have those good hard erections, then you might want to ejaculate with your mate or doing the ritual maybe once a month or something like that. Especially if you're debilitated debilitating. So this builds up the body, because the body gets used to cannibalizing the liver and the kidneys, the pancreas, the brain, in order to make semen. And so now you're getting the body out of that habit, and you are flushing the body with semen that you have retained. Now the body can reabsorb it.
Yeah.
So it's seed retention,
Yeah. So it's a practice of semen retention and strengthening those muscles that you use to urinate and stop yourself from ejaculation. It seems like it's also a practice of building awareness within the body as well, so that you are just more aware of what's going on, and when you're trying to stop from ejaculating. I also wanted to ask you, getting back to the topic of porn, what nowadays, you have these porn sites, but you also have like a lot of social media sites that that have porn on them too. So there's an increase of accessibility to porn on not just on porn sites, but on social media, like Tumblr. I got on Tumblr recently, and it's just a lot of like home porn, like people putting their own porn up and sharing their own videos with society. And so I wanted to ask you, what are your thoughts on that? How do you think that how society will evolve with all this access to porn? Because being a student of Tantra, I realized the importance and the powerful effect of sexual energy. With all of this, and being that porn is so popular, it's not talked about very much, but it is one of the top researched things on the net. People are always running into it or looking for it. What effect do you think this is a good or bad thing for society? Or not, or neither? What effect, if any, do you think it will have?
Right now, I would say we're in the terrible twos.
Like, ooh, porn. What's this?
Yes. It's society, Western society, is like an infant who's 2 years old was running amok.
I agree. Perfect way to describe it.
Right. So now in the black neighborhood, it's almost got a blessing hidden in the storm. There's a silver lining. It almost has, because sex it's been very conservative in the 50s, 60s, even in the 70s. It just started really showing itself in the 70s in the black neighborhood, and that releasing the shackles of Victorian ideals of sex that were handed down to us and given to us in our churches and so forth. That's pretty much a blessing, but it's a child who doesn't know how to handle the gun, giving a switchblade to a 2-year-old.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think you explained it beautifully, and also how there's a silver lining, because I did not grow up watching hardly any porn, did not know, wasn't very sexually aware, educated at all. And being a part of our Tantra family and using videos to study, or just being comfortable with watching them for whatever reason, I've learned a lot. Now, of course, practicing Tantra is a spiritual practice as well. So I'm grounded. I've faced a lot of my fears, and I've had some awakenings and things. So I'm not just flying off the handle, and just exploring randomly with no grounding, but it is freeing, like you said. It's liberating, and you learn a lot. I had some of the things that I've seen on these videos. I'm like, wow, you got some amazing things going on, some very kind of acrobatic, artistic, sexual acts going on that actually are pretty amazing. When you look at it from my perspective of being, that I've been sheltered a lot. And so I think it does have a freedom, and I think that there's a place for it, but it'd be nice if there was something that had more of a spiritual aspect to it, and we've talked about that, Tantra having a place, especially in its rawest form, because people need to know truth in their eroticism and be comfortable with that, because that's a part of self-acceptance and being able to expand your consciousness and having awakenings as well. So, but yeah, I think you described that perfectly. So we're going to take another break. It'll be our last segment that went by so fast, and so stay with us, and we'll be Yogi, and we have our special guest with us, Tafarinkrystal, my master tantra teacher, who is so polite to join us this evening on the topic, to discuss the topic of masturbation and pornography, which people have, a lot of men have concerns about, and even some women about, what is too much, and is it right or wrong to be engaging in masturbation or porn. And I feel like society is being liberated more and more, like you were saying, even with the Black community having porn. It's kind of allowed us to break free from the Judeo-Christian type of ideas and perspectives around sexuality, which is important, because to feel shackled in that way it leads to a lot of suppression and depression and addiction and all of that stuff. And we off air we were talking about how during ancient times, across many cultures, maybe across all cultures, there was a place for the sexual arts, the most erotic type of sexual arts, and it wasn't called porn, but we would, if we saw it, we would probably think it was porn-like. So just talk briefly about the importance of being able to celebrate and learn the erotic arts, and how there was a place for it in ancient times.
Well, why we have a lot of documentation is India, and and the indigenous blacks of India, their festivals carried a lot of sexual energy. The entheogenic herbs, mushrooms, and all of this, which they call soma and homa, and all of this, and the oracle readings and the priestesses using sexual techniques and ritual on mushrooms and all this. But once the Brahmanic class, which are white people, once they overtook ancient Black India, after several hundred years, really about 1,000 years, all of that completely faded away. They banned it, and so they needed to revitalize that. So that's why you have the book, the Kama Sutra. That's why you have these temples, these beautiful, elaborate temples with carvings of people having all kinds of sex, any kind of possible way you can think of. 10 women, 1 man, 10 men, 1 woman, with horses, cows. I mean, anything you can think of. They got statues in these on these huge, humongous temples, and this was they used this to revitalize, to bring a renaissance of these ancient Black teachings to the nation again. And it was pouring on the internet in ancient times, and people did pilgrimages there from all over India to consult with the priestesses and the priests, to go through elaborate rituals that were sexual, many of them, and it was and it revitalized India. The Kama Sutra came out. The Kama Sutra is actually an encyclopedia of porn. It's an encyclopedia of sex. And it did the same thing. What happened in Europe with the Renaissance, that's what happened in India. What's happening today with the internet revitalizing and changing everything, that's what happened in India. So, these practices are you can't get away from your sex, so you might as well bring it into your spiritual practice.
Right. I think that's. I think you described that beautifully, and share how important that is, and how it's always been with us. Like you said, you can't run away from it. So before we go, I definitely want to thank you from coming on and bringing your expertise, but also let the family know where they can learn more from you and benefit from your expertise. Tell us about your books, and any classes that you're offering.
Yes, one of
with Crystal Tantric Yogi, and we have our special guest with us, Tafari Kambuka, to discuss the topic of